everyone, lovely to have you with me. It's Carol here at Aakash Journals. So you will have seen, or I hope you will have seen, the previous videos where I have shown you how I've made my embroideries for my garden themed journal of Stitchery, and you will have also seen how I've made this fabric signature block ready for mounting my embroideries onto. What I want to do next is to create my cover. Now there are 1,000,001 videos on YouTube showing you how to make covers to journals, albeit hard covers or semi-soft covers in paper or even in fabric and decorated with lace. Most of them I have found have raw edges for their covers. Nothing wrong with that if that's the organic look you want. I don't actually want that for this particular journal. I want to have edges akin to this or like this that I can sew lace onto and decorate the edges, because my cover is going to be pretty plain to start with, and then I want to go over the top with some fabrics and laces, and then I'm thinking I will embellish a panel to go on top of that lace to finish it off. So that's what I've got in mind. So as I say, I want a pretty neat edge to my cover, and in order to do that I have to use a slightly different process to those that I've seen on YouTube. It's not a new process by any means. It's the usual process that you would follow to create a bag or anything along those lines. So now that I have my signature block, I know what size my cover needs to be. So whatever size my page is, I need to add on another 1/4 of an inch. I also need to make an allowance for the width of my spine. Now this is the outside edge, that's my spine edge. So to show you what I mean, what I've done is I've just created a quick template out of paper, and I'm just going to put my signature block inside and close it up. Now I'm hoping you can see that if I line that up properly, you can see that I've got a really generous 1/4 of an inch on either side here and on this edge. This is nearer a centimetre actually. I've got my spine here, and if I close it up and open it up, you can see that I've got a nice comfortable width there for my spine for when I sew in my signature block. So this is my basic cover size. I've cut myself 2 pieces of fabric. Now I've got one here, and if I put my template for the cover on top, you can see that I've added on another centimetre all the way round, which will become my seam allowance. So quickly to recap what I've done, I've measured my signature block, I've added on an extra 1/4 of an inch all the way round to create my cover, and then I've cut 2 pieces of fabric that are a centimetre all the way round wider or bigger than my actual cover template, and this centimetre area will be my seam allowance. Now the reason I've cut 2 pieces of fabric is that one piece will be my cover and the other piece will be the lining on the reverse of the cover. So here are my 2 pieces of fabric. So this is one, this will be my cover, and this will be my lining, the one that will be the cover of my journal. I've put Bondaweb, iron-on Bondaweb on that, and then I've attached to that some batting. Now this is some gorgeous wool batting that I have, and it's about 2 millimeters in thickness. Now that will give me a lovely surface to sew in, but it will also give me a nice padded surface as well. So let me recap what that sandwich is. It's my fabric, then I've put some Bondaweb on the back of my fabric, and then when I've peeled off the backing off the Bondaweb, I've ironed on some wool batting. So that's my front cover. On my second piece, that will be the lining, this is my fabric here, and if I flip it over, I've ironed on some Bondaweb onto the back, and this still has the backing on it. So let me just peel this off for you. There we go. So that is the backing paper to my Bonder web. And what it does is it leaves you with a smooth side and the normal texture of your fabric on the reverse. With that glue side uppermost, I'm going to bring in my template again, and I'm going to use a Frixion marker pen and a ruler, and I'm just going to draw around my template. Now, the reason I've done that is to make life easier for myself. I don't have to do that. I could measure round with a tape measure and do a tacking stitch or something like that, so that I can see exactly the size of my cover when I come to sew it. But with the joy of Frixion marker pens, they're heat erasable and they're absolutely perfect to use for a project like this. So the next thing I need to do is to bring in the front portion. So there we go, that's my front portion. This is the fabric side, and that is the side with the batting attached to it. And this is the fabric side of the lining with Bonder web side on the top. I'm going to put those two portions together, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch all the way around on that black line, but I'm going to leave quite a big gap, probably about 4 inches on my bottom edge. So I'm going to just mark that there so that you can see. Normally I would just wing this, and I haven't checked, it's slightly less than 4 inches. I haven't checked whether it's central or not, but I've just left myself a good gap here. So I will stitch from this point all the way around my cover on this black line to this point, and then I will take it all the way back again and finish off here, so that I've got double stitching all the way around, but good reinforced points at these 2 dots down here. This portion I will leave open, and the reason for that is I will want to turn this the right side out when I've trimmed all these edges. One good tip when you come to stitching this together is to put some paper on the back here, because when you actually send this through the sewing machine, this is going to be your bottommost layer, and with it being wool batting, it could catch on your feeder feet on your sewing machine. So what I tend to do is just use the same backing paper that I took off the Bonder web, and I just put that on the back over the batting. Just line it all up for you. There we go. I'll send that through my sewing machine like that, and when it comes out the other end and it's stitched, you can just rip away this backing paper. The other thing that I like to do is to take a couple of pins, and I just put a pin through all my layers, and this will stop it puckering, and it will also hold all my layers nicely in place. There we go, that's all nicely pinned, and that is not going to move anywhere. It doesn't matter that this paper is puckering on the back. I'm now going to bring in my sewing machine, and as I say, I'm going to stitch a double row of machine stitching, just straight stitching all the way round, with the exception of that gap down there. Here's my cover now that I've stitched all the way around it. I've taken my pins out, and the black line from the Frixion marker pen isn't as prominent now because I've stitched over it a couple of times with white thread, and there's my gap in there that I've left. So if I flip it over, this is the paper that I put on the back, and I'm just going to show you how easy it is to take it off. So I'm just ripping it away, and where the stitches have stitched, that gives you a nice perforated edge. Obviously this is the area where my gap was, so carry on doing this. So I'm just ripping it away using the stitch perforations, and then because you've got this little gap, you can grab hold of the rest of it and rip it away. You don't have to be too meticulous about this little bit, because this is the inside of your journal cover, so none of this is going to be seen. And there we go, that's our cover, nicely done. This, as you saw, is the Bondaweb side. So all I'm going to do now is trim around these edges, and I'm going to trim to 1/8 of an inch to my stitch line, but on this outside edge, so outside of your stitches. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to reduce some of the bulk for when I turn my cover inside out. So I'm just going to do that now. So there we go, everybody. That's my cover now all trimmed round, and I've even trimmed along this edge where my little gap is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it the right side out, use a bone folder, or some people use a knitting needle to really poke out the corners. So let's just turn this right side out. This is what my cover looks like now it's turned right side out, and there's my little gap at the bottom. Now, in the normal course of events, you would roll out your seams to push out the seam allowance that's tucked away inside as much as you can, and then you would take it to your sewing machine, you would take it to your ironing board and give it a good press. You might even want to stitch round the outside edge to reinforce it if you wanted to do that. But with this and my process, you can't, for the simple reason that, if you remember, you have got Bondaweb on the back of your lining. So that was the front, which had the battening on the back, and this is the reverse, which will be the inside of the cover and the lining, and it's got Bondaweb on it. Now, if you apply heat on to this now, it will activate that Bondaweb and it will glue it to the batting. Now, I don't want to do that. Equally, you could do it if you wanted to, and you could seal up that gap, give it a good press and call your cover done. But I don't want to do that because, if you remember, I want to put some fabric and lace onto the front here, and I want to stitch into this nice batting that I've got on the back, but I don't want my stitches to come through here. So I'm going to be using this little gap in here to snip away my threads, and to make sure when I'm doing my embroidery, my hands are in there and I've got them well away from this lining here, so I've got no threads or stitching from the front coming through onto the lining. So how do you do it? Well, you can, as I've been doing here, roll these seams between your fingers and then just pop a pin along the edge to hold it in place. So I'm going to bring in my Tim Holtz ruler, and I'm just going to push into that corner and hold. And it does the corners beautifully, I find. So there's my pin going in there. And I'm just going to work this all the way around. There we go, that's my cover with my edges all rolled out and pinned, and now I'm going to just put a dry iron on this very, very extreme outside edge, and only to as far as my pins are, so certainly not going into this area here. So this is what the base cover looks like now. As you can see, I've taken out the pins and I've pressed all the way around the outside edge, not this little gap at the bottom, and that has activated the Bondaweb that's inside on the lining, so that my seams, rolled seams, are perfectly secure now, but I can still get inside here to access the rest of this when I do my stitching. So if I bring in my signature block, that'll sit in there like that, and it will, I need to move it up a little bit, there we go, and that will be my cover, and the little gap is down at the bottom there, which, as I keep saying, I'll close up in a little while. So I'm going to leave it there now that I've finished my base cover, And in the next video, I will have some laces and fabric that I've lifted out ready to embellish the outside cover, and I'll also have some more Bondaweb, and you'll see why. So I hope you'll join me for the next video, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing this. So take care everybody, until then, bye bye now.